All right, if you'd like to join the Before the Lights podcast sponsorship group, here's how you do it. I've gotten some inquiries. Send me an email, beforethelightspod@gmail.com. That's beforethelightspod@gmail.com, and I can talk to you about all the different packages that are available. This is Tommy Canale, and welcome to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Joining us today is a two-time All-County and All-City pick from Walton High School, the only Pac-10 player to be ranked in the top 10 of 8 categories when he played at Arizona State University, a former professional basketball player from 2007 to 2013 in Bulgaria, Italy, China, Mexico, Belgium, and Germany. He's the son of recently retired Coach Lon Kruger and has been an assistant coach at UNLV, Oklahoma, and Northern Arizona. Currently, he's the head coach of the UNLV Runnin' Rebels. Please welcome to the show, Coach Kevin Kruger. Coach, how are you?
Doing well. That was you went back to the Walton High School days. That was interesting.
Kind of brought a probably full spectrum for you there.
Yeah, that did. I saw a lot of memories going through your mind at that point.
You were born in Texas. What do you remember when you think back of your childhood?
Really the first, like when you say that, the first image that comes to mind is kind of just sporting events. Nothing in particular. I mean, we always supported who my dad was coaching, but my sister played a lot of sports growing up, played multiple sports as a kid, figuring out what you enjoy. And I don't have any memories of Texas, but, a few of Kansas, and then a lot of Florida and Illinois. And then, as you mentioned, Georgia. But yeah, just a lot of sports. I mean, everything revolved around my sister's practice or game or my practice or game. And I just remember my mom always being there, kind of ready to kind of make it all work and put the puzzle pieces together so we could get where we needed to get to.
Growing up as the son of Coach Lon Kruger, as your father, not so much what he taught you about basketball, what did your mother and father teach you about who the person you are today?
It's funny. My wife and I were talking about that kind of the other night, just, as we've got a daughter and another one on the way, and just kind of what life is like kind of growing up as a coach's kid. And, they're going to be, God willing, growing up coaches' kids as well. And, it's just now being on the other side of it, a lot of things obviously make more sense. But the thing that my parents just always worried about was just try to being a good person, just be nice, be somebody other people want to be around. And, the sports side and the accolades and all that stuff, the quote unquote pressure that, coaches' kids or successful, parents' kids feel. I think a lot of that is external. Mm-hmm. We never, at least I didn't, and I can probably speak for my sister to an extent, that there was never any pressure of, got to do this, this is a benchmark for your age because of, the opportunity that you have and the advantages you have being, like having access to gyms and coaches and trainers and people in the business. So that's just what it was, be nice, the more, we never gotten in trouble for anything athletically, but, disrespecting somebody or not giving them the attention they deserve or the respect they deserve was going to be an awkward car ride or an awkward conversation growing up for sure.
I can imagine. You played for Centennial High School in Champaign and then went to Walton High School in Marietta, Georgia. What kind of high school player were you, Coach?
I was an okay high school player. I wasn't dominant by any stretch. Real skinny, but I could shoot it. Okay. That was my thing. And I mean, it was for as long as they played. I mean, there was no secret to that. But a lot of fun, a lot of fun relationships that had been built through there. Being 20 years ago, the landscape was a little different. The prep schools weren't really they weren't a normal thing. Those more like it had like a military stigma to it.
Yeah.
Going somewhere for a prep school. And The AAU was it wasn't as organized, with the EYBL and the Adidas circuit, Under Armour, like it is today. So there's a lot of crossover, and it wasn't quite as structured. But that's the long answer. But yeah, I had fun. I had fun playing.
You brought up something that joggled the memory for me. I used to coach at Illinois Valley Community College. I was there for a dozen years, 7 as the head coach, 5 as the assistant. And I remember prep schools had that military stigma to it. So when you brought that up, it kind of joggled that. I remember that specifically, that prep schools wasn't like something that people looked at.
Well, and you certainly weren't going there with a thought of playing national schedules. I mean, none of that was even a discussion yet. I still remember the first time I saw Amari Stoudemire, because I knew him. I knew who he was. He had a name. He had a presence. I think he was number 1 or 2 ranked player in my class. Same with Ike Diagu, who I ended up being teammates with. I knew the names, but you walking onto the court, you play them for the first time. You don't have that anymore. I mean, you got social media. You've got the internet now, of course. We just didn't have that same, unless you ran into him at an elite camp or a top 100 or super softs or whatever. You didn't have a name with a face. And it was definitely different, but fun at the same time.
You chose Arizona State. What was the tipping point to go there, and who is it between Arizona State and who else were you looking at?
Well, Arizona State was really like we talked, we mentioned, it wasn't a dominant high school player really by any stretch. I think I just had a unique skill set, probably just above most in my class. And, it took a lot of unofficial visits, but no official visit to Georgia with Jimmy Herrick Jr. And I had a good relationship. Georgia Tech had Jarrett Jack already committed, so that was not really a discussion. A lot of talk to Central Florida. Kirk Sparrow at the time was at Central Florida, so I had gone down there. And then Dana Altman was at Creighton. Mm-hmm. So actually the only 3 visits I ended up taking were at Creighton, Georgia, and then Arizona State. But, Rob Evans at Arizona State, I just felt that I had known Coach Altman and I had known Coach Sparrow for such a long time that I just felt there may be a little bit too much of a connection to the family there. And Coach Evans, I just felt that he believed in me and give me an opportunity, and that's at that time. I just remember thinking about being excited to go out there and compete, to be on the team and just kind of be a part of a team. And so that's what ended up making that decision.
You graduated in 3 years after redshirting your freshman year, then transferred to UNLV to play for your father as the first college basketball player to use the rule that allowed players to transfer without sitting out a year if they graduated and had at least 1 year remaining. My question on that, Kevin, is this. You said you played for Coach Rob Evans, and he had just left ASU. Did his leaving have any impact on your decision to transfer?
Oh, it had all of it. I mean, okay. Like I said, Coach Evans was somebody who I had felt had given me an opportunity. Not being a highly regarded high school player, I felt that the opportunity Coach Evans had given me really allowed me to kind of create my own basketball identity. And there's no way I would have left Coach Evans at that year if he had still been coach. It's one of those things you look back on, and a simple different decision here or there would have changed my life drastically. But no, there's no way I could have walked into Coach Evans' office and said that I was going to go. But the crazy thing is he probably would have supported it and even brought it up because he knew that opportunity to play, with family is unique, mm-hmm. and to do it at the college level is even more unique. So it would have been interesting, but no, there's no way I could have left him.
UNLV team went on to the Sweet 16. You win 30 games that season. What was the chemistry like of that team, you coming in, and how quickly did they accept you?
Well, I had a few opportunities to kind of spend some time with some of the guys in the summer because it was my dad's 3rd year in Vegas. So I had a few opportunities to meet him, get to know him. But I think that the chemistry really it was a seamless transition. And I think a lot of that also came, coming from the Pac-10 at the time. There was kind of even though we may not have known each other all that great, there was a level of respect from both directions. And also being older. Our team, that team was older. We had, 5 seniors. Wink Adams was a sophomore. He was the only non-senior starter. But even then, Curtis Terry was a junior. Corey Bailey was a junior. Joe Darger was a sophomore. So there was a little more maturity, and there wasn't somebody that I was walking in with and that we were just butting heads and competing for that same spot initially. So it worked out from the roster spot on their side, and then from me personally as well, of course.
What do you remember after advancing the Sweet 16, coming back here where I live in Las Vegas as you do, and how this town is crazy about UNLV basketball?
Yeah, it's I've told this story a few times because obviously there's what happened when Tark was here and when this thing was rolling, and there aren't a ton of people that were here during that time anymore or to the same effect. But when we got done playing that game, we had a noon tip off. I remember it because we actually had both early games. I think we tipped off at like 11:30 the first game against Georgia Tech. And then we had what felt like forever until the Wisconsin game. But even that game was early too. I think that was noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I remember I sitting in the Chicago airport because we had a Southwest flight home. And, thinking about that now of, a team advancing to the Sweet 16 and getting on a commercial flight to go back home, it just wouldn't happen. But, there were a bunch of UNLV fans on there. But the most vivid memory is when we got off, we had no idea what to expect because none of us would, we didn't have anybody that had grown up, with the exception of Marcus Lawrence, but he wasn't old enough to remember it, that had grown up in Vegas to see that Tark era. And we had no idea kind of what we were walking into, but when we got off the tram at McCarran, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, and you have those escalators that go down to the baggage claim. Yep. It was shoulder to shoulder, just Rebel fans all the way through baggage claim. I mean, it was packed shoulder to shoulder, and they didn't know, they probably didn't get to see anybody. And we went down there and just waited for our bags and then talked to fans and got on the bus and went back to the Thomas and Mack, where there was another, pretty large contingent of people there. And the best part was the games were early. So I think we ended up getting back at I want to say something like 6 or 7 at night. It wasn't all that late, and we got to enjoy it and get ready for the next week. I
was attending UNLV in 90 when they won it. And it was, something you never forget. Streets closed down. It was absolutely pandemonium on that campus. And when UNLV is doing something, I can easily see the baggage claim at McCarran being packed, everybody screaming and chanting Rebels and going crazy, faces painted. All you see is scarlet and gray and red everywhere. Kevin, you weren't drafted, but what were your projections after playing? Did you think you might get drafted, or were you automatically thinking, I'm going to either get an invite to an NBA camp or I'm going to go overseas?
Yeah, I didn't expect to be drafted. I knew that the senior year I'd had from a personal level wasn't something that the NBA was going to go for, but I did feel that I had a number of workouts with teams, and I did feel that a couple of those workouts were really good for me and beneficial for my stock at the time. Although still knowing, with my measurements, if you're not going in the lottery, there's not a whole lot of teams in the NBA that want to project, 6'1" subpar athlete. So we knew at that point, that probably going to, talk about the overseas route and just kind of, and, again, even at that time, the D League was not publicized like it is today. I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't have any teammates that had played in it. So at the time when that was discussed, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it because I just didn't know much about it. And of course that falls on me, but it just had it didn't have the same respect level that it has now and the same kind of path for a lot of people, but ended up having few good workouts and getting invited to summer league with the Orlando Magic. Felt I had a good summer league, so that led to a training camp invite. And then at that point, it kind of started becoming a little more real of, where you stack up and what you need to do. And then because of the training league or because of the training camp and feeling like I did what I wanted to do during training camp, ended up getting drafted into the D League. And that ended up being a great experience. The Jazz organization that owned the one that we played for in Orem was, it was top notch, top of the line, just awesome people, and really couldn't have asked for a better minor league situation than I had there.
If you would, Kevin, can you talk about what the level of play was like for the Utah Flash that you played for? Because some of the listeners may not be diehard basketball fans like you and I, and may not understand that that really is superior to what they may think it is, because they think it's a developmental league or a G League.
Oh yeah. I don't think there's any question that the G League now, even the D League back then, it's probably the second best league in the world. Mm-hmm. Of course you could talk about, top level Spain, Italy, Greece, but when you just talk from top to bottom, we had some knock 'em out, drag down fights with Rio Grande when I was in Utah, who had Will Conroy, who played in the NBA for a long time. One of my teammates, Ron Dupree, spent 6 years in the NBA. Sean Singletary, I'm pretty sure he's still the all-time leading scorer at Virginia. He was somebody on a nightly basis. You can really go down the list. Jelani McCoy played 8 or 9 years in the NBA. Brian Chase. The league, it just didn't have the publicity that the NBA did. But every team had a handful of guys that either had spent time in the NBA, were on assignment from the NBA, or ended up playing in the NBA. And it was a very, very competitive, hard league.
When I was doing some research on your background, is it correct that you played for the Utah Flash 4 different times?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, at least.
Okay. Maybe more.
Well, because the schedule is a little different, or at least it was back then, where you had a little bit of time after training camp to decide, were you going to go to the D League? Were you going to go overseas? So there were a couple times, but the team doesn't lose your rights. Okay. So like when I went to Italy, or if I went to Bulgaria, if you came back with that season ended, or whatever, you just decide to, part ways with the club, that team keeps your rights. So you end up going back to that same team. So that's why I ended up being in Utah. 2009,
you played for Napoli, Italy.
Yeah, I was in Naples for a little while, and unbelievable city. That place was beautiful city.
2011, 2012, you played in the Ethos League in Belgium. You guys win the Belgium Cup. You score 31 points. What do you recall about that title game?
I remember it was the only championship. It might be different now, but it was the only championship in that time for the city of Aalst as a sports city, period. And it was very similar on a smaller scale with less people, but a very similar feel of love for the sport as there is here in Vegas. And I remember the game was in Antwerp, which is an unbelievable city in Belgium, and we played against Antwerp. So we had qualified, we had gone through the tournament, and then here we got to play Antwerp in their gym. And I just remember it being 50-50 with Okapi fans. And I just remember, I remember the funny thing about that game is that I remember we felt like we kind of controlled in the second half. We were kind of always 2 or 3 possessions ahead. And a guy named Michael Roll, who is still playing overseas, went to UCLA. He wouldn't stop just throwing in like these just weird shots or threes or whatever it was, to always keep the game kind of stressful. You know how those games get at the end where if he misses one, we get the rebound, we get fouled, we make 2. All right, now it's like an 8-point game. Now they have to make a 3, but he kept keeping it to like 4, or he'd make a 3 to bring it to 3, or he'd make a 3 to bring it to 5. So there was always just this, like, the pressure never quite left until that very last possession. But that was an unbelievable year. I met some people I still talk to, and Chris Copeland played with the Knicks for a little while, and the Pacers. He was on that team. Justin Holiday, who won a championship with the Golden State Warriors, was on that team. The late Nate Fox on that team. Stephon Jackson, who I'm pretty sure is Conference USA's all-time leading scorer from UTEP, was on that team. It was a loaded European team. So it was an unbelievably fun year. I wish it would have gone on for more years, to be honest.
What's the transition like playing all over, like Bulgaria, China, Germany? What kind of transition is that like for you?
Fun. It's really, I mean, looking back on it, you wish you could do it again. It's fun. You get to meet a bunch of people, live in different cities. The basketball can be stressful, the professional side, but you just live out of duffel bags. It's pretty normal. You got to shoot a bag or two for shoes that you like playing in, that you're comfortable in. And then you got kind of your go-to sweats and some things you might wear to dinner. And outside of that, that's just kind of what you carry around. And then you come back here for the summer, work out, try to advance as much as you can, and then you just go back over. But the European setup, if you can get with a good team over there, it's top notch. They provide an apartment, a car, they make sure you're comfortable, translator if needed. And it can be a lot of fun and a great experience.
When in your playing career do you feel like you grew up as a person?
Arizona State, for sure.
Arizona State.
I think in high school I was very quick tempered, just almost kind of, I could probably say, looking back on it, maybe even a little negative, and just didn't seem like I could have had a lot more fun. I think I was just more so tight. And being at Arizona State with Coach and having a lot of life lessons really that hit you that you can only kind of really experience maybe at that college time has allowed me to grow up. And, Dan O'Dowd, Russ Pennell, Brooks Thompson, Tony Benford, and then of course, Coach Evans, they were all on staff. They would allow us to mess up, make mistakes as people, and then kind of learn from them. But I really felt that that's kind of where I took ownership of my own career. Really started focusing on my lifting and my eating, sleeping, and that just allowed me to grow and kind of really just kind of feel it out, because my parents always had, they always supported me, always had faith in me. But that was when the real discussions of, well, do you really want to do this for a living? Because when you ask a coach's kid what they want to do growing up when they're 9 years old, what are they going to tell you? They want to be like their dad.
Right.
That one's simple. And, had I gone to college for something other than basketball, maybe, it would have been easier to, go into business or a different direction. But being a player, that's when those conversations with him really started to be serious. Like, do you want to play in the NBA? Because this is what they do. Do you want to, make a living out of this? Because this is what I do. This is what coaches do. And so that was just an unbelievable 4 years for me that I wouldn't trade. And I really attribute a lot of my growth to that time period.
When did you start thinking about becoming a coach?
Well, I mean, like I said, I've always just kind of said it. You do that as a kid, but I think even the coaching side, because I remember asking my dad a long time ago, maybe even when I was in middle school, why'd you get into coaching? And his answer was, it was just blunt and direct, and it ended up being this kind of where I'm going with my answer is just because he wanted to stay in the game. As soon as he was done playing, how do you stay in the game? How do you stay a part of the sports? You either get with the front office or coaching or, directing athletics or general manager, maybe in the pro side. And I'm kind of the same way. I love basketball and want to be a part of it. And I love the competition of it. And, coaching or front office had it, whatever kind of opportunity would have presented itself first, probably would have been the route I wanted to go. But to be able to be a part of UNLV and it be, alma mater and my first head coaching job, I think that's just kind of too good to be true right now, really.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You started at Northern Arizona University. How did you land that gig that lasted 2 seasons there?
Yeah. So, and this is what we do with our graduate assistants and student managers here. It really kind of all started at the Final Four. You just, as a graduate, I had got done playing and I went to be a graduate assistant for my dad at Oklahoma, and talking Steve Henson, who's now at Texas San Antonio, is somebody I've always really relied on. How'd you do it? Who'd you talk to? What do you say to him? And a lot of the direction and kind of leadership in that realm also came from him, because he said, you just got to go to the Final Four. You got to go to the Final Four, and you got to almost be okay being annoying and you just sit in the lobby, and that's kind of what I did. And I went out there with Zach Rogers, who's a graduate assistant with me at Oklahoma. We went to the Final Four, and we just pretty much just sat in the lobby. And anybody that you have any tie to in any capacity, I mean, just, hey, saw you guys play against somebody. Hey, really enjoyed watching this player. And you just try to start any sort of dialogue. So luckily for me, I actually bumped into Jack Murphy, who is, born and raised Las Vegas. He's now an assistant at Arizona. And we just got to talking for maybe a minute or two. And he had remembered me from playing here and just kind of asked me what I was up to. And I just mentioned that I wanted to get into coaching, and I was a GA. And so what he actually did is he had a little bit of time. He walked around with me and just like almost cold calling people. Anybody he knew, he introduced me to. And I just looking back on it, not knowing how big of a deal that was at that time. I mean, how could I ever repay him for taking that? And I remember I sat down with Mark Pope, who's now at BYU, Craig Brown, who was at UCF at the time, who I had known, but he also knew him. I mean, just the number of people that he gave me an avenue to ask for a phone number or an email or start some sort of dialogue. And then oddly enough, he had a spot open a few months later. So using that time to kind of get to know him and allowing him to get to know me, although he was really trying to introduce me to other people, ended up almost being like a impromptu interview. So when he had a job open up, I went out to Flagstaff and met with him, and it just kind of took off from there.
Final Four, you always know who's looking for a job. You can see him.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You walk through that lobby, walk through the lobby. And I mean, it is what it is, but it's a necessary evil. And
it is.
It's also kind of fun and exciting because, you get to see and meet people. And even if you're not going for a job, it's fun to even just cross paths with some of those, some of those heavy hitters in the college basketball game.
Today's show is brought to you by Aroma Retail Sent to Your Space. Our sense of smell is the first to develop of all of our senses. Even before we are born, our sense of smell is fully developed and functioning. They are low cost, simple, easy to set up, and use pure grade fragrance oils. They are the least expensive solution for environmental scenting. They ship within 24 hours. Let's get your place smelling wonderful. With over 80 fragrances to choose from, such as Candy Cane Christmas, Eucalyptus Forest, The Four Seasons, Cedar Seduction, and my favorite, Mandalay Bay's Coconut Spice. Go to the link in the show notes or to the website, beforethelightspod.com/sponsors, and click on the Aroma Retail logo. Use the code LIGHTS10. That's LIGHTS10 to get 10% off your entire order. Coach, you mentioned you joined your father's staff at the University of Oklahoma as a grad assistant. How difficult was it for you to separate dad from boss?
Well, it was always coach. There's never been any comparison.
Okay.
So, it's kind of, people have asked that, and I don't know any different, but, he technically couldn't oversee me as being his son. So again, like Lou Hill, Chris Crutchfield, Steve Henson, those were the guys. And he made it pretty clear when I got there. He was like, I'll tell you if I need something, but, really just whatever you can do to help those guys, and that's because that's the role of the GA for the most part under on his staff was, help the staff in any way you can. And, like we explained to our GAs here, it's not a lot glamorous about being a GA. You're helping with laundry, you're helping with bags, you're helping with rebounding. You don't really have a set job other than just helping. Mm-hmm. But it was great because also, and again, I don't think this is because I'm his son, because I've seen him do it with other people, but his inclusion and what he allows people that come to be a part of the program. We as GAs, we sat in every single film session, with the staff. And, when we helped with every individual workout, and if the coaches needed something, they would let it be known that we would help and do that. But they really took that on, and he really took that on as a GA role is really trying to groom somebody to be a coach. So allowing us to do that really just kind of made it invaluable. Just being able to sit in there on a film session every day before getting a coaching job with a guy who's now going to be in the Hall of Fame is, that could probably propelled us, me and Zach Rogers, who's also coaching now himself, probably propelled us as much as anything.
2019, you came back to UNLV as assistant under TJ Otzelberger. What was the biggest difference you noticed from the last time you were here at UNLV to when you returned as a coach?
Hard to say anything specific other than there's just been so much kind of a constant turnover. There, a couple ADs, a couple coaches in other sports. But hard to say anything too specific. It is a little different because, every time I walk into this office, this is still like my dad's office because for 7 years, that at that age of my life, this was his office. But no, I was just so happy when Coach Otzelberger, when TJ called and said that, there's a spot on his staff. He thinks we'd be good for it. I talked to Allie, my wife, for about 30 seconds. And she said, is this something that helps you with your career in the long run? I said, I think so. And she said, let's do it. And that was it.
What I want to bring to the forefront, because I don't think enough people, especially across the country, are going to be shocked by this, which is the academics. Fall of 2020 semester, a 3.57 GPA, which is the highest ever, record cumulative of 3.32 with 9 guys on the dean's list. People that remember back to the TARC days are going to think this is a far cry from the days of the 80s and 90s. Congratulations to you guys in the way you've pushed academics, because I don't think that's been out enough.
No, thank you. Thank you. That's Connor Robinson, who helps us with academics. We talk to our guys a lot about just not having a distraction. And I don't mean that negatively with academics, but if you really, truly want to focus all of your attention and your mind on basketball while in college, you've got to take care of your academics first. You can't go to practice with a paper that you haven't done that you do at midnight and expect to get the most out of your athletic side without doing that. So he does a great job of that. He helps them, so that they can go and give everything they have during practice. And I think a lot of it, with that focus and attention that he puts on it, is why we've been able to have some academic success as well.
Getting promoted to head coach, A, what was it like when you got the call? And B, did you think you'd really get it?
I wasn't sure at first. And then it was kind of similar to the playing career. I think as I kind of would have a conversation, my confidence started to grow a little bit. But I was actually on my way to Target. We had at the time, she was about, just under 1.5, our daughter. So I had to run to Target to get some baby things. And that's when President Winfield and Desiree called. And it's a little different being in a car and focusing. But at first I wasn't too sure. Nobody really knew which direction. Was it going to be an outside hire or somebody from this, that, or the other? But as I think my relationship with her and President Whitfield started to grow a little bit, and I had those opportunities to talk to him, hopefully they could kind of sense the love and the tie to UNLV and the city and the community and how it all kind of comes together as one for me. And that's why I think in the end we ended up getting it.
What's the biggest thing for you now, going from the assistant coach's seat to now being the face of UNLV basketball?
Well, as everyone says, the final decision does end up going through you, which is different. It is different sitting, when you leave a meeting as a staff, as an assistant, you've kind of done your job, you've presented whatever it is, and then you kind of leave and you move on to do whatever it is next that you need to. And obviously as the head coach now, when that meeting ends, you've got some decisions to make from the information. But, I think the thing we've got to do and that we've focused on is really just continuing to, remind the community and remind this city that this is their team. This is still the UNLV that they loved and that they love and they want to support and they've always supported. And we feel that that's our responsibility to put a team out there of guys that understand that, respect it, but enjoy the community and the city cheering for them and rooting for them. And I think that's one thing that we've done is we brought in a team right now that is going to be easy to root for. I think the community and the alumni are really going to watch this year's team and root for them and enjoy watching them and enjoy watching them grow. And that was our first approach as a staff, was to kind of get that group together and go from there.
What kind of style of play can fans expect from Coach Kevin Kruger?
We hope as a staff that when you're done watching a UNLV game as a fan, you say, wow, they play really hard. They really love to play. And of course, we'd love to run around and trap and steal it and dunk and shoot threes. And of course we want to do a lot of that. But I think we want that from the fan side, but then we want other coaches when they're watching us, getting ready for us, or if they just play us, to kind of say the same thing, like they almost warning their team that those guys play really hard. That's what we want guys that want to play really hard and they want to just have fun competing. It's not always going to be great. We know that, but if they can stay kind of competitive and stay getting after it, because I think that's what kind of the city of Vegas is, it's that fighters, down to your last chip mentality and kind of the edge on a chip on your shoulder. And that's what we want. We want, when people leave the Thomas and Mack, to say those guys love playing and those guys play really hard.
I love that. My goal always with my guys were, when they get done playing you, make them wake up tomorrow wishing they didn't.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
I think you guys can be a surprise team in the Mountain West, but what is the realistic expectations for outlook for the year?
Yeah, I think, just to throw, it's a cliche for a reason, but we've got to get better every day and every week. We have 10 new guys, 9 transfers and a freshman to blend in with, Hamilton and Brown and Coleman who coming back. So we do understand and acknowledge that it's not going to be the flip of a switch and everybody's going to know when their teammates back cutting or know what they're thinking in a trap or an impromptu play. So we do understand that. We realize that. And that's just got to be our goal. We've got to get just incrementally better throughout the weeks, especially here in the fall. We've got to attack it from a conditioning and a strength standpoint so we can stay injury free. And because our non-conference schedule is no joke. And we know that. And so we're going to be thrown into the fire really quickly. And we've got to stay healthy. We've got to stay not only physically, but mentally. And we've just got to keep getting better. We've got to keep getting better, and we've got to be playing our best basketball in February and March.
How are you going to balance the demands of coaching, being a husband, and being a father?
Well, luckily, I've got the best wife in the world. She's never asked one question about if I say I got to go do this or I got to go do that. She says the only thing she might ever ask is, what time are you going to be home? Because I do enjoy dinner time with Cammie, my daughter, or, bath or whatever it may be before bedtime. So she will ask that just so she knows, because there have been times where I get home and she's finishing dinner and I look at her and she's like, well, how was I supposed to know? You didn't tell me when you were getting home. So, but I think I've had the best mentor in the world for that. Somebody who I watched growing up do it, balance, the basketball and the school, the coaching at the school and the fatherhood and all that. So I'm going to try to take as many pages out of his playbook as I can.
Is there any option outside of being successful?
I hope not. I really hope not. I think, that's the plan. We've got a lot of people in our corner right now helping. And we know that it's on us for the city to kind of show them for them to come back. We've got to show them that there's a reason, and that these guys are this group is the group that they need to come back and support. And I think if we can do that, if we can put a group on the floor that this city and this community really rallies behind, that will inevitably be successful.
I'm honored and humbled that my show here is heard in over 60 countries. So what do you want my listeners to know about Coach Kevin Kruger as his first head coaching job at UNLV?
Oh, wow. I didn't know that one was coming. Let's see here. No, just I hope I look like I'm having as much fun as I am on a personal level, because I really do enjoy it every day. I get to work with 3 of my best friends in the world, We got a group of guys here that love playing basketball. And so if I ever look upset, I'm still having fun. I just may be down for a second, but this really is the best job in the world.
As I said, as a Vegas resident, I'm excited for the season. I'm excited to get out and see your team play. I think it's time for Scarlet and Gray to lead the way in this town again.
Oh, I'd love it. Love it.
Kevin, thanks for your time and being on the show. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Listeners, if you would rate and review the show, 5 stars, nice comments are always appreciated. It'll only take you about 30 seconds to do so. And follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everybody, a salute, a chin chin.